The night was very dark and very cold. Snow fell without stopping. It felt like the sky itself was crying. The wind howled through the walls of Winterfell like a warning. Thousands of soldiers stood ready, packed shoulder to shoulder along the battlements. Their hands shook and their breath turned to fog in the freezing air. They stared into the dark, past the burning trenches, waiting for something none of them could truly imagine. Jon Snow had given speeches about being brave. He had told his soldiers to hold the line no matter what came. But even he could feel the fear spreading through the ranks. It moved from soldier to soldier like a cold wind. No speech could stop it. High above the castle, Daenerys Targaryen flew on the back of Drogon. Rhaegel circled nearby, cutting through the thick storm clouds. From the sky, the two dragons watched the dark horizon, waiting for the first sign of the enemy. Down below, Arya Stark hid in the shadows. She kept a special dagger hidden up her sleeve, the same one she had carried on many dangerous missions before. Her eyes never stopped moving. She was watching every corner, every shadow, every door. Under the great heart tree, Bran Stark sat completely still. His eyes looked far away, empty and distant. He was searching through time itself, watching moments that had already happened and moments that had not happened yet. In the crypts below the castle, Tyrion Lannister stood among the women and children. The air down there was cold and damp. He wondered quietly if this might be the very last night anyone would ever see. Nearby, Sansa Stark tried to keep a calm face. She stood tall and steady. But inside, her heart was pounding. She was terrified she would lose everyone and everything she loved before the sun came up again. Then, beyond the walls, something huge began to move. The dead had arrived. The army of the dead stretched across the land as far as any eye could see. It looked like an ocean of darkness rolling slowly toward the castle. Thousands of frozen feet crunched through the snow at once. The sound echoed across the fields like distant thunder that never stopped. The Dothraki warriors were the first to move. They charged forward on their horses, screaming into the night. Their swords were set on fire, and for a moment, they blazed like a row of falling stars across the black battlefield. It was a beautiful and terrifying sight. Then one by one the burning lights began to go out. The defenders on the walls watched in horror. The screaming stopped. The fire disappeared into the dark. Silence spread across the battlefield like a heavy blanket. Every single Dothraki rider was gone. The horde of dead had swallowed them whole in only a few minutes. The dead did not stop moving. They pushed forward like a giant wave crashing onto a shore. The unsullied soldiers stepped up next. They stood in tight, disciplined rows and fought with incredible courage. Spear after spear struck down white after white. But it was never enough. For every one they destroyed, 3 more dead soldiers climbed over the fallen bodies to take its place. High above, Jon and Daenerys finally swooped down on their dragons. Fire poured from the sky in wide, burning rivers. Entire sections of the undead army caught fire and collapsed into ash. For just a moment, hope returned to the battlefield. It looked like the living might actually have a chance. Then the storm arrived. The Night King raised his arms high into the air. A blizzard unlike anything anyone had ever seen rolled over the battlefield in seconds. Snow and wind swallowed everything. Visibility disappeared completely. The two dragons became separated in the swirling white chaos. Jon lost sight of Daenerys and panic crept into his chest. Down on the ground, the dead reached the outer walls. Giants slammed their massive fists into gates that had protected Winterfell for hundreds of years. The stone cracked. The gates gave way. Screams filled the courtyards as the battle turned into complete chaos. What had been an organized defense became a desperate fight for survival. Inside the crumbling castle, Arya moved silently through the halls. Dust and debris fell around her as walls shook from the fighting outside. She struck down white after white with quick, precise movements. Every step she took brought her closer and closer to the Night King, who she knew was somewhere near the Godswood. Bran remained exactly where he had been the whole time, sitting beneath the heart tree. This was exactly what the Night King expected. The ancient enemy walked calmly into Winterfell, surrounded by a ring of white walkers. Everywhere he stepped, the air turned bitterly cold as if winter itself followed his footsteps. Jon fought desperately to reach the Godswood, cutting down white after white in his path. But there were simply too many. Every time he broke through one wall of enemies, another appeared behind it. Daenerys landed near the Night King and unleashed a stream of dragonfire directly at him. The flames wrapped completely around his body. For one brief, shining moment, everyone believed it was finally over. Hope surged through every defender who saw it happen. Then the fire faded away. The Night King stood there, completely untouched. Not a single mark on him. A wave of fear spread through the remaining soldiers as they realized dragonfire alone would not be enough to stop him. The White Walkers pressed forward toward Bran. Theon Greyjoy and his remaining Ironborn fighters made their final stand between the enemy and the Heart Tree. One by one, his men fell to the frozen blades of the White Walkers. Finally, Theon himself charged at the Night King, weapon raised, giving everything he had left. He was killed instantly. His body fell silently into the snow. A heavy stillness settled over the Godswood. The Night King continued walking toward Bran without pausing. Hidden among the broken ruins nearby, Arya saw her chance. This was the moment she had trained her entire life for. She sprinted through the darkness, moving exactly the way she had in the story everyone remembered. She leaped down from above with her Valyrian steel dagger aimed straight at the Night King's heart. For one brief second it looked like she would succeed. It looked like the Night King would fall just as history said he should. Then everything changed. The Night King turned around before she could strike him. His hand shot out faster than any living person could move. He caught Arya by the throat in midair, stopping her completely. The dagger slipped from her fingers and dropped silently into the snow below. Arya's eyes widened with horror as she realized what had just happened. The Night King stared at her without any emotion at all. His pale blue eyes showed nothing, not anger, not surprise, nothing. Then with barely any effort he threw her aside like a broken doll. Arya's body crashed hard into the roots of the great weirwood tree. She slid to the ground and did not move again. She had lost consciousness completely. Bran watched everything happen, unable to move or help. The dagger, their one true weapon against the Night King, now lay useless in the snow, far out of reach. The Night King stepped forward calmly. He reached out and placed his frozen hand directly on Bran's forehead. In that single instant, everything changed forever. He gained full access to all the memories of the three-eyed raven. Thousands and thousands of years of history flooded into his mind all at once. Ancient magic, long-forgotten secrets, and hidden knowledge from ages past all became his to use. Bran screamed as the connection tore through him, his body trembling under the weight of everything being taken. Across the entire battlefield, something strange happened at that exact moment. Every single White Walker suddenly stopped fighting. They all froze in place at the very same time. Then, together they all turned and looked south toward the rest of the continent. The Night King now knew everything he needed to know to win the war. Jon finally broke through the last of the Whites and reached the Godswood. But he was only moments too late. He watched helplessly as Bran collapsed lifelessly beneath the great tree, his connection to the Night King finally broken. The Night King calmly climbed onto the back of Viserion, the undead dragon. Without looking back he flew off into the raging storm. The remaining White Walkers followed close behind him, disappearing into the blizzard. Winterfell had fallen. As dawn approached, the surviving defenders gathered whatever forces they had left. There was no time to grieve, no time to bury the dead. They fled south into the cold morning light, leaving the ruined castle behind them. Behind them, something even more horrifying was happening. The dead were rising again. Every soldier who had fallen in the battle, every brave defender who had died protecting Winterfell, was pulled back up by dark magic. Friends became enemies. Brothers turned into monsters wearing the faces of people they once loved. Right before the survivors' eyes, the army of the dead doubled in size. As the first pale light of morning touched the frozen, broken ruins of Winterfell, Jon Snow looked back one final time. The castle that had stood for thousands of years was gone. Humanity had lost this battle, and now only a desperate retreat remained. The long night had truly begun.